the country talking about the English Constitution. People often say to me, it doesn't exist. They say, we haven't got a constitution. I'll be honest with you. If you're British and you say to me, I've got a British constitution, I'd say you haven't. If you're British and you say we haven't got a constitution, I'll say you're correct, right? The English Bill of Rights came from the Glorious Revolution. There's something you should all understand. How many people, put your hands up if you've heard of the European Convention of Human Rights? How many of you know that many of them rights contained in the UN declarations and the European Convention of Human Rights come from the Magna Carta? That's how much rights you've got. Let me tell you something about the English Bill of Rights. It came from a convention parliament. We've got our own convention. It's called the English Convention Parliament, and they were the rights. Guess what? Under equity law, there's a clause that says if there is a set limit on a period, and once that period is closed, the beneficiaries are you. The rights within it are yours forever, and then you have a group of trustees. The trustees were the Crown, Parliament, and the judiciary. They are currently failing us. Don't listen to the people that say we want another system. We have the greatest system in the world. We need to take it back. When we take it back, Richard said something. He said, why don't we have all these different systems? You mean like the old English system? You mean like the counties and the shires? We were a confederacy of shires. Well, if you didn't like what they did in Essex, you moved to Kent. And all of those taxes were unique to them areas. The people paid into their own communities. And let me tell you something. We had militias that protected our nation. The Essex militia repelled Napoleon. Napoleon landed in Essex. The riflemen went round back to their cottages and picked up their rifles and shot at them. They got back in their rowing boats, went back to their ships, and they left. That's the English. We would stand and fight. This is our land. And it doesn't belong to the British. It belongs to you.
This is the convention he's speaking of. So it says Convention of Parliament, 1689. The English Convention was an assembly of the Parliament of England which met between 22nd of January and the 12th of February, 1689. 1688 old style. So its legislation was labelled with that earlier year and transferred the crowns of England and Ireland from James II to William III and Mary II. A parallel Scottish convention met in March 1689 and confirmed that the throne of Scotland was also to be awarded to William and Mary. The assemblies of 1688. Immediately following the Glorious Revolution, with King James II of England in flight and Prince William III of Orange near in London, the Earl of Rochester summoned the Lords Temporal and Lords Spiritual to assemble, and they were joined by the Privy Councillors. On the 12th of December 1688 to form a provisional government for England. James II returned to London on the 16th of December. By the 17th he was effectively a prisoner of William, who arrived in London the next day. Subsequently, William allowed James to flee in safety to avoid the ignominy of doing his uncle and father-in-law any immediate harm. William refused the crown as de facto king and instead called another assembly of peers on the 21st of December 1688. On the 23rd of December, James fled to France. On the 26th December, the peers were joined by the surviving members of Charles II's Oxford Parliament. And that's from the previous reign, ignoring the MPs who were just elected to James' loyal Parliament of 1685. The Earl of Nottingham proposed a conditional restoration of King James II, an idea supported by Archbishop Sancroft. But the proposal was rejected, and instead the Assembly asked William to summon a convention. Right, just checking something there. Convention of 1689. The Convention Parliament was elected in January and first met on the 22nd of January 1689. The Parliament spent much time arguing over whether James II was considered to have abdicated or abandoned the throne in some manner, and who then should take the crown. The Whigs referred to theories of social contract and argued that William alone should now be king. A few radical Whigs argued for a republic. But most Whigs argued for a limited monarchy. So this is the Scottish Presbyterians, okay, the Whigs. Yeah, the Venetians. They came from Belgium originally. The Tories and took over Scotland under David I. The Tories favoured the retention of James II. Now, the Tories back in the day were the original English aristocracy. Now, they were called Tories because in Ireland the original term was short for Catholic bandits. And of course, the biggest majority of people on these isles were still Catholic. But of course, a lot of them went to the protest and became Protestants. But still, holding what you would class as Catholic as a morality, as it were. So it was pretty much a battle between the existing barony, called the Tories, and the Whigs, who were impostors that had come from Belgium as aristocrats under David I and pretty much took over the entire landmass of Scotland. The Tories favoured the retention of James II, a regency, or William's wife, Mary, alone as queen, because of course Mary was English. Archbishop Sancroft and loyalist bishops preferred that James II be conditionally restored. Now remember, this is bishops of the Church of England. So the Tories wanted James II or Mary, and that was also backed by the bishops of the Church of England. So they could both together see that they didn't want these Whigs in because they represented something else. What did they represent? Well, everything that Cromwell represented, which means everything the moneylenders represented back over there in Holland. Yeah, so at this time, 1689, the majority of people in this nation still wanted it to be as it was. So they're the Tories and the bishops of the Church of England. And the opposing force are the Presbyterian Scottish Whigs, who were actually Belgian aristocrats. On 29th of January, it was resolved that England was a Protestant kingdom, and only a Protestant could be king, thus disinheriting a Catholic claimant. James was a Roman Catholic. By the beginning of February, the Commons agreed on the descriptor abdicated, and that the throne was vacant, but the Lords rejected abdicated, as the term was unknown in common law, and indicated that even if the throne was vacant, it should automatically pass to the next in line, which implied it was to be Mary. However, on the 6th of February, the Lords capitulated, primarily since it became apparent that neither Mary nor Anne would agree to rule in the place of William. As a compromise, the laws proposed that William III and Mary II should both take the throne, which the Commons agreed if William alone held regal power. Now, Mary and Anne, okay, they're Protestants, and Anne, her downfall was basically the fact that the Spencer Churchills had the claws into us through Sarah Churchill. You can already see that in Anne, they'd put a lot of effort. So it makes you see a bigger play. When I've studied this stuff in the past, you can see that there's a much greater play going on than what they present to us. But anyway, the Parliament drew up a declaration of right to address abuses of government under James II and to secure the religion and liberties of Protestants, which was finalised on the 12th of February. On the 13th of February, William and Mary were proclaimed King and Queen of England, Scotland and Ireland. The acceptance of the crown was conditional, not upon acceptance of the Declaration of Right, but on the assumption that they rule according to law. On the 23rd of February 1689, King William III reconvened the convention into a regular parliament by dissolving it and summoning a new parliament almost a year later. The actions of the Convention of Parliament were regularised in early 1690 by the Crown and Parliament Recognition Act of 1689. Now, I've been coming across this Recognition Act in some of the data I've collected in relation to dealing with equity and common law and ecclesiastical. The first act passed by the regularly elected second Parliament of William and Mary following a new election. So the Recognition Act of 1689 was the first act that actually was put through under William and Mary. Effect on 13 colonies. The Convention Parliament of 1689 would be imitated in the 13 colonies, and the use of such conventions as an instrument of transition became more acceptable and more often used by the colonies, resulting most notably in the 1787 Constitutional Convention, which drew up the United States Constitution. So we can see again, can't we? The Civil War in America, the Yanks versus the Americans, was the Holy See pretty much doing what they'd done here in Civil War, which were putting the Venetian side, the Holy Roman Empire, into the mix. You can say that that's exactly what went on in America when they finally achieved power on the British Isles or England. Then they did the same in America. Interesting, eh? And maybe Lincoln realised that. We need to start to see that is the blockage. They're breaking their own rules of occupation. We need to understand this fully, and then we start to push that. Yeah? Your Lord Lieutenants are in charge of the magistrates. There's where you hit if you're getting dragged into magistrates and they're acting like tossers. So it's important, I think, that we now cement this, that it's important that we pull this to bits and understand its value, what's been repealed and what hasn't, what's in force, so that we know what's being broken by this occupation force, which is the United Nations. So that's the effect. It's notable acts of Parliament, the Bill of Rights, the Toleration Act and the Mines Royal Act. Again, 3 more acts. See also 1689 English general election, list of MPs elected to the English Parliament in 1689. That might be interesting. Cornwall and Halifax Ministry, revolutionary breach of legal continuity. Now, Cornwall is important because all the fucking soldiers that were being pulled out of these islands for the First World War were sent from there after they'd been paraded past Stonehenge as a sacrifice. Revolutionary breach of legal continuity and Convention Parliament, England. Sources: Eris Tim, Revolution, the Great Crisis of the British Monarchy. Alan Lane. Then you've got Eris, all these different references, citations. And there we have it. Now, if we just have a flick, you'd expect there'd be a lot in there. They're cleaning Wikipedia up. There's nothing on the talk. And there you go, folks. I think it's exceptionally important that we pay attention to this now in relation to what it is we're all seeking to pull together. Now, also, I just want to quickly... I've been going through my website because when I updated it a couple of months ago, right up to date, which I've been avoiding for quite a long time, it has a lot of new things, and basically I can go through every report now, and I have to set a featured image which gives me this fancy image at the top of the actual report. So I've been going through them, and as I've gone really far back to the beginning of the site, I forgot what stuff I've put in there. You know, there's some really good stuff in. This is an excellent read. In profile, the Committee 300's Roundtable Network Chat Mouse. Now, I bet if I read this myself, I'm going to have to update it. I know I am. But what I came across is just this data on how important the House of Palavicini has been on these islands. Now, just to quickly recap, the House Palavicini operate for the House Farnese. The Farnese are by far the most important Holy Roman family that's got power and claws on the British Isles, and it's been so for a very long time, probably since 1066. Now, they've done some fancy pants stuff. Through John O'Gaunt, they've brought in these darker people that weren't ginger. That's been one point. We know, we've explored the fact that the Stanleys have operated for the House Palavicini in its entirety. They're the people that put the Tudors on the throne. They are also the family that were behind Elizabeth's tenure, specifically in building up a navy. Piracy on the Spanish galleons coming out of the Americas, of course. They were pirating them, you know, to all to rally these people. That's what they were doing for the Queen. So we've gone through that. Now it says here, these are in the notes that I've put for this particular thing, but I thought these were interesting. It says, the House of Palavicini are from the Genoese. They sponsored the rise of Napoleon, Bonaparte, the British Empire, the Venetian Party, and the House of Habsburg. The Habsburgs being the old Venetian Party. Now, haven't I said to you many times that they call themselves the new Venetian Party of the North today? So the old Venetian Party was the Habsburg Empire in and of itself, controlled in the background by the House of Palavicini and others. Let's not pretend. Now, the House of Palavicini actually operate for the Farnese. Okay, so the Rothschilds don't even come close to this kind of power. Horatio Palavicini funded William Cecil, 1st Baron of Burleigh, from 1520 to 1598. So there you've got an important Palavicini guy with Henry 7th and 8th. Chief advisor and close friend of Elizabeth I's 40 years, dominated foreign and domestic policy in England, often overriding the Queen herself. That's the power of William Cecil. For the House Palavicini. He created the English Secret Service with Walsingham. Manipulative, engaged in many plots, I should say, with Walsingham against other courtiers and foreign nations. Uncle to Sir Francis Bacon, and Cecil's closest friend and financial backer was the Venetian Horatio Palavicini. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, major player in the Van Company and its predecessors. See, the Levant Company was before all the East Indias, yeah? And they're all modelled on it, so that's the most important one, the Levant Company, which of course is what we know today as Israel. And also, Robert Dudley was an intimate of Queen Elizabeth I, remember? Okay, and people have even said that James I was actually a daughter from Dudley and Queen Elizabeth I. There's interesting data on that. So he wasn't even a fellow, which is why he liked his voyage. Sir Francis Walsingham, 1532 to 1590, spymaster for Elizabeth I, studied at Padua for 4 to 5 years and worked on behalf of Cecil, close associate with Thomas Smythe. And operated his intelligence service on the same basis as and in league with Venice. Sir Thomas Smythe, first governor of the East India Company, associate of Sir Francis Walsingham. James Harrington, 1611-1677, wrote Oceana, arguing for England to become the new Venice. Okay, now the Presbyterian Whigs are direct from the Holy See. So all the Catholics here originally still thinking they're operating under the Holy See. Can you see how they play this? The Holy See as families is how they played this. So see the Whigs, see Cromwell, see Venetian, see money lending, see the House Palavicini of the Holy See. Paolo Sarpi, 1552-1623. A leading member of the Ridotto Morosini, a one-time ambassador to the Vatican, corresponded with Francis Bacon. His protege, Fulgencio Micanzio, was a mentor to Thomas Hobbes, case officer for Galileo, and considered to be the first empiricist. Sarpi's Art de Ben Pensar was the basis for the works of John Locke. Yeah, Supremo Protestants, all being controlled by the Holy See. Francis Bacon, 1561-1626, nephew of William Cecil, revered Aristotle. Well, Aristotle, when I studied the philosophers back in the day, was a complete twat. An absolute twat, and the reason we're in this mess we are today, going right back to Alexander the Great. What a shame he didn't represent the data that comes through the avatar Plato. Socrates, which we get through Plato. Because Plato is probably, Socrates is more than likely an amalgam of even older data up to that time of Plato. But I don't know. Between 1577 and 1580, he toured Europe, spending time in Italy, particularly Venice. He was a personal friend of Paolo Sarpi. His publishing agent in Venice was Micanzio, intelligence asset of Cecil and Walsingham, Lord Chancellor in 1618, leading member of the England Rosicrucians, okay, which is the esotericism behind Freemasonry. Thomas Hobbes, 1588-1679, took his grand tour in 1610, disciple of Micanzio, the protege of Paolo Sarpi. Associate of Francis Bacon, published Leviathan in 1651. Now, Paolo Sarpi is an exceptionally important figure in these times. And I mean exceptionally. If you just look him up, you'll be quite surprised what you find. 1688, Anthony Ashley Cooper, 1st Earl of Shaftesbury. 1621-1683. Patron of John Locke, one of the 8 Lords Proprietors of North Carolina, who introduced slavery to America. Okay, slavery, Palavicini, Holy See. You seeing this? leader of the Venetian party until his death in 1683. So he was obviously tied through the Habsburgs. Plotted to overthrow Charles II. Right. Charles Montague, Earl of Fairfax, top operative of the Venetian party, King William's Lord Treasurer, oversaw the founding of the Bank of England in 1694, organised England's first national debt on behalf of the Venetian party, reaching 20 million by 1696. At 30% interest, folks. Chancellor of the Exchequer appointed Newton to head the English Mint and oversaw the Great Recoinage of 1696. In 1697 he became Prime Minister, succeeding Lord Sidney Godolphin. From 1661 to 1715, who became Lord Treasurer under King William. Another crony, Robert Spencer, Lord of Sunderland, was named Lord Chamberlain in 1697. Later acting as Secretary of State from 1708 to 1710. In 1707, Montague was appointed Ambassador to Venice. At the same time, we got the Act of Union, so he's operating under Anne. John Churchill, Duke of Marlborough. Now we're starting to look at these, aren't we? These Blenheim Palace crew. Captain General of English forces in the War of Spanish Succession, ally of the Venetian party, key control along with his wife Sarah of Queen Anne. So they were controlling Queen Anne. Yep. Protestant they might have claimed. Did they know who they were actually operating for? I doubt it. Or, you're a queen, for God's sake. You'd know. Mary and William did, and tried for ages to get Queen Anne to get rid of Sarah. Anne, remember, lost 19 kids. That doesn't happen, does it? Come on. Enemy of Leibniz, Swift, Harley, and the pro-American development faction. Proponent of permanent war doctrine in the War of the Spanish Succession. Yeah, so that's the Churchills. War, mass murder, mass murder, mass murder. And if you watch the Peaky Blinders, you get an insight into how he and the Oddfellas, which have a big fraternity up here in the old north, were running and kicking off the underworld, criminal gangsterism. The Doria family, Spanish Habsburgs. Giustiniana, Venice, Genoa. The British East India Company, a commercial company 1600 to 1873, chartered by Queen Elizabeth I and given a monopoly of trade between England and the Far East. In the 18th century, the company became, in effect, the ruler of a large part of India. Remember, the company ruled it, not the English, not the Scottish, not the Welsh. Yeah, the Venetians. And a form of dual control by the company and a committee responsible to Parliament in London was introduced by Pitt's India Act in 1784, but by then they controlled the government in its entirety. So we have been pushed into a front position, a scapegoat position through the imperial days. Yeah, what started off as trade, gave us the 13 colonies in America, was took over by the Venetians and turned into a colonial slaver operation. The end of the monopoly of China trade came in 1834, and after the Indian Mutiny in 1857 to 58, the Crown took complete control of the government of British India. Remember, the monarchy crown got took away in 1649. We're talking here about the private, unincorporated society that is the inner city of London, the Temple Crown. They run China, they run India, Iran, Pakistan they created. Yeah, that's who we're talking. It's not English, it's not the Scottish, it's not the Americans. It's these bunch of Venetians operating for the Holy See. The East India Company set up factories, trading posts in Masulipatam in the east coast of India in 1611. on the west coast in Surat in 1612, on the east coast in Madras, now Chennai, and in 1639. Attempts to set up a factory on the Hooghly, one of the mouths of the Ganges, began in 1640, but were unsuccessful until 1690. And again, when it first set up, East India wasn't colonising, it was trading. Yeah, and setting up factories in them areas so it didn't have to move goods around on the oceans and manufacture them all here. So it was sharing with the Indians, or the Indian elite, of course, what were being set up originally. It weren't until the Hanoverians got it still going and the Bank of England were on there and the government in debt to it that it became this horrendous monster. The settlement later developed into the city of Calcutta, now Kolkata. By 1652, there were some 23 English factories in India, Bombay and Mumbai. Came to the British Crown in 1662 and was granted to the East India Company for £10 a year in 1668. The British victory in the Battle of Plassey in 1757 gave the company control of Bengal, and there you get your opium. Yeah, so you're into 1700s, Hanoverian time, Venetians completely running it on behalf of the Holy See, when it became everything it became that wouldn't be enjoyed in India and of course in China. So I hope the Chinese people, you may listen to that. That's what's really going on, because they've got control of your nation now, and they're about to use your nation, or are using your nation, in exactly the same way they used the British Isles. Same gig, same they're doing with Pakistanis. You're contracted to the empire, not England, not the English Parliament, not the English Crown. You are the British Empire. All the immigrants are. So that's not what you're fighting, you guys, if that's what you think you're fighting. And it's important that people start to see it in these terms before we all play the game that they want us to play and set off bringing about Armageddon. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that made sense to you. Till the next time.